Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 14th Annual Public Meetings of Canada's International Development Research Center, or IDRC. Bonjour à tous et bienvenue.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 14th Annual Public Meeting of Canada's International Developing Center, or IDRC.
And I am the chairperson of IDRC's Board of Governors. It is my pleasure to call this meeting to order. I would begin by acknowledging that IDRC's head office is situated in the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, whose stewardship on the land and waters we now call Ottawa date back to time immemorial. Indigenous knowledge is strongly linked to the land and ways of life. As an organization supporting international development, we want to acknowledge that this means reaffirming the value of local and indigenous knowledge. Our acknowledgement aims to recognize history and the experience of colonization. Much work remains to be done, and we are on the path to reconciliation. And this reconciliation includes a lot of what we call decolonization. This reflects, as IDRC, our commitments to continue to support and honor the indigenous and local voices. Miigwech, and thank you. Nous sommes reconnaissantes des voix.
We are grateful to see a diverse public in Canada and in the whole world, especially representatives from the Government of Canada, of the diplomatic community, of the civil society, of the community of research, and the beneficiaries of subventions and partners.
Before we continue, some quick housekeeping rules. This event is being recorded for future use. It will be conducted in Canada's two official languages, English and French. Interpretation is available in both languages. In the room here, we have headsets. I think the headsets are at the back and available for simultaneous interpretation. If you're joining us online, please note that simultaneous interpretation is also available by clicking the interpretation button at the bottom of their Zoom window. Please note that you are able to change languages at any time. L'interprétation est disponible dans.
Interpretation is available in both official languages in the room. Headsets are available for simultaneous interpretation. Online interpretation is also available by clicking the interpretation button at the bottom of the Zoom window. Please note that you can change your language at any time.
To have a Q&A session. There are microphones again in the room if you are here present in the room. And for our audiences online, we kindly ask that you can submit your questions in a written form through the Q&A feature, and also raise your hands, through the Zoom raise hand function. You're also really welcome to ask your questions verbally. Should you experience any technical difficulties during this session, we ask you to please get in touch with the Zoom web support page if you're online. Alors,
it's going to be a very interesting hour. We will have the progress that were carried out in the strategy of 2030, especially when it concerns equality of gender and the annual report of this year. We will have 3 short presentations that will deal with the IDRC program, and they will show how the research done by the IDRC will have an impact by supporting the 2030 strategy. The 2030 strategy will determine areas in which the center will be contributing to the carrying out of objectives for 2030 of the United Nations. Important progress was carried out during the first 2 years of the strategy 2030 of the IDRC. The IDRC is on the right path to accomplish these objectives. In spite of all these challenges, this progress shows the strength of the relationship between the IDRC and its partners in the whole world. Its relationships are essential to supporting the IDRC for research and science that strengthen the resilience when it comes to climate change, food safety, the changes that favor education and health at a worldwide scale. Research will encourage new voices for the growth that will encourage gender equality and democracy.
Here are presented in IDRC's annual report, which is available to read and download at idrc.ca. The research results in the annual report and the more than 50 years of research supported since IDRC's founding demonstrate the critical role that research, knowledge, and innovation play in building a more inclusive and sustainable world. My first months as chairperson of IDRC's Board of Governors since I was appointed in June have been productive and very engaging. I want to say a big thank you to IDRC's Board of Governors, to the senior management team, some of you present here today, to all the employees of IDRCs, whether here in Canada or around the world. Thank you all for welcoming me so warmly. The world certainly needs more IDRCs. The global community is emerging from COVID-19 pandemic, whilst more people continue to grasp the extent at which the climate crisis is really unfolding on us, the food security challenges, and the impact of growing inequalities. With all of this, IDRC continues to rise to meet the moment, using Strategy 2030 as a roadmap to leverage experience, scale solutions, get knowledge into the hands of local leaders, who can then put it into work for sustainable and inclusive positive change. IDRC's commitment to diversity and equity and inclusion, both internally and externally, are extremely essential in its role as a leader in research for development and to be able to successfully implement Strategy 2030.
There are so many reasons to celebrate the year that just passed, but there's always been challenges. The employees of IDRC, our partners, and the researchers that we are supporting showed their resiliency and their capacity of innovation that were formidable to adapt and resist to the repercussions of the COVID-19 pandemic on their work. Everything that you are hearing today will be included in the report was done in spite of a difficult situation. This resiliency has to be celebrated. The process is also, and we have to include the impact and the persistent effects of the pandemic, among other challenges.
Employees at IDRC are the heartbeat of this center. The Board of Governors is committed to an equitable IDRC that positions all employees to succeed. All employees have a voice that matters. Whether you're part of a union or you are not part of a union, all employees' voices matter. The current negotiation for renewal of the collective agreement for the unionized employees is an important component of this success. Working together, IDRC employees and partners and the researchers we support will overcome whatever challenges lie ahead and build on the successes achieved to date. At this point, I would like to introduce IDRC's president, Jean Lebel. Jean will share a brief reflection, and Jean will have the opportunity to introduce those who are going to be presenting back to us. I'll be back again during the Q&A session and look forward to having your questions. Jean, à vous.
Jean, you have the microphone. Thank you, Dorothy.
Welcoming you to your first IDRC annual public meeting as chairperson. And IDRC is quite fortunate to have you, Dorothy, at the head of the boardroom table. We all at IDRC, and me in particular, are quite fortunate to interact with you to secure that your leadership and the leadership of the Board of Governor is transmitted to all the organization. Merci beaucoup. As it is my
Thank you very much.
president of the center, I feel quite privileged to be working with you. Thank you. To all of you here in Ottawa and around the world online, thank you for joining us. Merci de vous joindre à nous.
Thank you for joining us.
Languages, so feel free to use the headset. I would like to touch on two items today. First, a brief overview of progress during the second year of IDRC Strategies 2030. And second, a bit of reflection on my 10 years as president of IDRC, as my mandate ends in May of this year. So let's start with the overview of the progress. La stratégie 2030.
The Strategy 2030 is IDRC's guiding light. It establishes the center's vision for a more sustainable and inclusive world. Launched amid a global pandemic, as was mentioned by Dorothy, the Strategy 2030 has risen to the occasion. Implementation is proceeding well, especially considering we are at an early stage in the strategy's 10-year timeframe. This progress reforms are to invest in research and innovation, but we are in the sharing of knowledge and is continuing to mobilize worldwide alliances to have a more inclusive society. We have achieved many progresses in the number of research that we are funding and that will be presented by our guests. When it comes to the sharing of knowledge, the center has now a structure that will go above the 5 publications of results, but that is engaging the center and the actors of this research to share their knowledge to have an impact that is even bigger with these results of research. And these worldwide alliances, whether it is with different networks of researchers and partnerships in research, will increase our resources in order to reach our objectives. And we are in the right way to accomplish these objectives. This progress, in spite of the pandemic, showed our force, resiliency, and capacity of adapting. In order to reach the meet the needs for 2030, we must continue to have a transformative change. This past year's annual report focuses on how gender transformative research that promotes women's empowerment is achieving significant impact. We will have with us Erin, Natasha, and Adida, who will talk to us about these programs of the IDRC and will show how our impact will be done on gender equality.
A few thoughts on my presidency also. I would like to reflect for a moment on my time as president of IDRC, which has been a privilege and an honor. It was a short 26 years ago that I joined IDRC as a senior program officer. I still remember June 3rd, 1997. I have had a front row seat to watch IDRC grow, evolve, and respond to continually shifting development challenges and research needs. And I'm just going to stick to these challenges, development challenges. As I prepare for the conclusion of my mandate, a few reflections stands out. Premièrement,
first, IDRC's regional presence is a pillar of its business. The 5 regional offices are filled with invaluable expertise at all levels. It allows to respond to the requests of the researchers and institutions, to empower them and to accompany them, and not to do research and to allow links with international networks. It has evolved with time to strengthen capacity for researchers and organizations that don't have a lot, and it is always evolving towards researchers communities that are reputable and who are recognized in the world by their expertise and by the fact that they are locally active in the countries where these problems occur. For solutions to worldwide problems, we need the participation of everyone in research. The regions, the personnel that are deployed from Ottawa or in our regional offices participate in helping by giving their expert and by participation in different networks. These last few years, we have reopened our regional offices in Senegal to serve the West and Central Africa. We signed a memorandum of understanding with the government of India to reaffirm a shared commitment, our first one in more than 45 years, to reaffirm a shared commitment to supporting research for development work in Asia. And we have relocated our regional office, thanks to the support of our staff and our Jordanian authorities, our office for Middle East and North Africa to Jordan. Adding to this, the continued strength of the regional offices in Kenya and Uruguay, and it is clear for me that IDRC's regional presence is well positioned for the future.
IDRC supported research is making critical contribution. Whether it is by being a trailblazer in new field of research, particular niche, or by rallying others to grow the pie for researcher and institution in the region where we are present, IDRC model of supporting research and creating critical impact is still valid. Takes, for example, fields of research such as education, artificial intelligence, vaccine development, not only for human, but also for livestock, governance and justice, green economy, refugee rights, and post-pandemic recovery. These are areas where IDRC play a pivotal role in the recent past. But we have also areas where our contribution continues to be at the forefront of the international agenda for finding solutions to global problems. Leadership in areas such as climate change and adaptation. I can recall that when we started this work in 2005, many actors were having a smile in their face about what we were doing. EcoHealth that has transited to One Health, an area that nobody believed in and that is now talked at the highest level, whether it's at the G7 or the G20. Agriculture and food system, I want to elaborate because every year I talk of this. The care economy, the economy of work, digital inclusion, and democracy. The innovative research by IDRC is amplified by partnership that allows us to achieve impact at a scale that is not possible working alone. Under Strategy 2015-2020, previous one. And now Strategy 2030. IDRC has worked diligently to establish new innovative partnerships. I'd like to share one example of those partnerships that demonstrate impact of both innovative research and contribution of many supporters of research. The Science Granting Council Initiative, or we call it internally SGCI, was founded in 2015. It's funded by multiple actors, us, the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation, the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, South Africa National Research Foundation, and the German Research Foundation to a tune of $45 million. The SGCI is a special one. It enables science granting council across Africa to strengthen their capacities across all areas of operation necessary to support successful and strategic research partnership. This initiative is enabling Southern Partnership, including through joint call for intra-Africa research collaboration, raising the profile of Science Granting Council within national and regional science system, helping councils rally national government to increase investment in research development, for example, in Ghana, where the government pledged to increase R&D investment. This approach gives far more autonomy to recipients to do the work that is needed according to their priority. It is, in my opinion, a model for effective research for development. We don't sponsor individual projects. We are sponsoring research council in countries in Africa to be at the top of their game with the best practice and the best strategy that they develop for their country according to the support they receive from their research community. It is a step away from the hand-holding, if I might say. It is responding to the fact that the research community has evolved over the last 50 years. And if IDRC wants to continue to play its role, we need to get also in support of those higher tier of researcher and continue, yes, some support to the lower tier. The SGCI is one of many effective and innovative partnerships leading the way towards a better future. Global problem needs global solutions that are requiring participation on equal footing. Ma dernière réflexion porte.
My last reflection deals with how we have overcome challenges to position IDRC for the future. Whether difficulties with funding, uncertainties, or the widespread impact of the COVID-19 pandemic or other challenges, IDRC has risen to the occasion and demonstrated tremendous resilience in the face of adversity. This was no small task, and I thank every member of Team IDRC who helped me during those years and those many challenges. One of the ways IDRC is positioned well for the future is through its strengthened parliamentary appropriation. In 2018, the Government of Canada increased IDRC's recurring parliamentary appropriation. This enhanced support sent a clear signal that IDRC is a valued Government of Canada partner and an active member of the big family of international affairs of this country and of the government. When I reflect on my time as president, I think of the countless researchers I have met. These are the people who are doing the work today that will lead to the solutions of tomorrow. Finding and supporting these people is in IDRC's DNA. I am deeply touched that my last trip next week for the IDRC will lead me in Uruguay and in Brazil. And what a pleasure to note that one of these recipients of this Gardner Prize in 2018 in Worldwide Health will be among the people that I will visit. An agent is declaring these researchers exceptional, and he is now the father of all the programs worldwide. And this was a small contribution from the IDRC that did the difference. What a pleasure to be accompanied by Carlos Jose Sousa, who was cutting carrots when I was doing my PhD, and who asked me to accompany him for a return in the place of the crime, if I can say this. Well, I worked for about 5 years, and who will participate in this trip. But it's not only me, it's Angela Caida, who recently was named director of the Canadian Institute of Research for Health on Gender and Health. Angela was a recipient of the scholarship when I joined in 1997.
This future, I'm confident that Strategy 2030 will enable impact for years to come, and it will help the center evolve and adapt. What remained constant, it's IDRC unique mandate. Everyone at IDRC is a steward of this mandate. The mandate will live on, and it is in good hands. IDRC's success is the sum of its people. Thank you to the governors. Thank you to the management team. Thank you to my colleagues, employees here and abroad. Thank you to the Alumni Association. Thank you to partners and grantees worldwide for enabling the success of this great organization. Thank you to the minister that I've been reporting under through the board over the years for their support to the organization and to me. I hope that in the future, that sweet spot that I've described so many times in my public presentation, that is present in everyone's IDRC remain a sweet spot to make the world better, a world that is more inclusive, a world that is more sustainable, and where research is not going to the shelf, but is going into the betterment of life and livelihood of all humans. Thank you very much. I would like now to introduce our first presentation illustrating progress towards Strategy 2030 through the lens of gender equality. And for this, I'm going to invite Erin Tansey, who is our Director of Sustainable and Inclusive Economies. And Erin, over to you.
Yeah. Bonjour tout le monde. Hello, everybody. Alors, la promotion de l'égalité des genres.
So, advancing gender equalities continue to be a central focus for IDRC's programming.
The focus of IDRC's programming. So, Strategy 2030 recognizes that persistent inequalities pose significant barriers to realizing the Sustainable Development Goals, and reaffirms IDRC's commitment to SDG 5, which is to achieve gender equality and empowerment and empower all women and girls. So with Strategy 2030 as a framework, serving as a framework, this past year's annual report highlights our work over the past year in advancing gender equality as a priority area of our research investments and our partnerships. Alors, il est essentiel d'éliminer les obstacles à l'égalité des femmes et des filles pour bâtir un monde plus durable et plus inclusif.
Removing barriers to equality for women and girls is essential to building a more sustainable and inclusive.
Going to school, fewer forced into early marriage, and greater prevalence of women's voices in government and policy making around the world. But I don't have to convince you that much more still needs to be done. So IDRC funded research seeks gender transformative change. So meaning deep social change that can only be achieved by addressing the root causes of gender inequality. And that stretches from the individual level all the way to the societal level. Notre travail de collaboration
Our collaborative work with partners across the Global South addresses the intersectionality of gender inequality with other types of inequality, including those connected to social class, sexual identity, and religion.
Formative research tackles inequalities in ways that reflect the lived experience of women and girls and promotes sustainable solutions that reduce barriers for women and for their advancement. For example, in the past 5 years, IDRC has invested over $80 million in gender transformative research that addresses this gender inequality and the underlying power dynamics that perpetuate inequalities. This includes support to over 120 projects in more than 60 countries. Last year, we invested in 38 gender transformative projects, so this very specific sort of term of gender transformative, with funding support totaling almost $40 million. Women really are at the heart of solutions for a sustainable and inclusive world. Recent results from some of the research that we supported reinforce this conviction that advancing gender equality does lead to stronger, to healthier, and more prosperous families, communities, and countries. So Strategy 2030 will continue, as I said, to inform IDRC's work in advancing gender equality. But what we're getting to now is the presentations that you'll hear in a moment. And these presentations demonstrate two key streams of this work. First, long-established programming that is built on years' worth of research and of networks and network building. And the second is an emerging programming that reflects IDRC's enhanced focus on foresight, to, in a sense, anticipate and then also respond to emerging needs, to emerging challenges and opportunities, and to hopefully fill knowledge gaps. So I'd like to now introduce Edida Ampere, who should be on our screen. Edida is a senior program specialist in our Climate Resilient Food Systems program. And she's going to deliver our first presentation. Edida is based in our regional office in Kenya, based in Nairobi, and obviously she's joining us online. So Edida will speak about the longstanding IDRC partnership called the Cultivate Africa's Future Fund, otherwise known to us as Culti-AF. And you'll see and you'll learn a bit more about how this project is improving food and nutrition security, it's improving resilience, and gender equality across Eastern and Southern Africa. So welcome, Edida, and over to you.
Thank you, Erin, for the introduction. Warm greetings to all our listeners. I'll tell you about Cultivate Africa's Future Fund, or Culti-AF in brief, in a bit, but allow me to first mention that in Eastern and Southern Africa, where Culti-AF operates, women's contribution to the agricultural labor force ranges from 40 to over 50%. In spite of this high participation, gender inequalities undermine women's abilities to contribute to the food security and nutritional well-being of their families and communities. Women in the region are also at the front line of adapting to climate change, but they are poorly equipped to make the necessary adaptations. Therefore, Culti-AF intervenes to address these gaps. Culti-AF is a 10-year, $35 million partnership between IDRC and the Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research. The fund aims to improve gender equality and social inclusion within the agriculture sector. It supports smallholder farmers, focusing on women and youth, to develop resilience in agricultural value chains by adopting improved agriculture technologies and digital innovations, accessing finance, and building entrepreneurship and business skills. Culti-AF projects have helped to increase incomes and improve food security and nutrition in Eastern and Southern Africa. And since 2013, RTF has supported research teams in 10 countries, resulting in 19 new innovations. I will use one project in Kenya to illustrate the work that CalTF does, the picture-based insurance, and I'll call it PBI in short. For farmers, crop insurance is an important risk mitigation tool, particularly at a time when the effects of climate change are increasingly impacting crop yields. However, the uptake of crop insurance by smallholder farmers is generally low and has traditionally been a preserve of men. First, insurance products are expensive and women may not have the money to buy them. The high prices are in part due to monitoring costs incurred by insurers trying to ascertain the crop damage and extent of loss. Second, farmers are not aware of how insurance works. This lack of knowledge breeds mistrust and becomes a deterrent to use of insurance. But PBI is quite unique in 3 different ways. Number 1, farmers engage proactively by using smartphones to take pictures of their crops throughout the growth season and submitting them on a digital app called Seed to Grow. When disaster hits, the picture loaded by farmers coupled with satellite data are examined by agronomists and insurance companies to decide the amount to pay out against farmers' claims. Using pictures reduces the insurance costs by replacing physical monitoring. The engagement of farmers makes them appreciate the transparency in delivering insurance. It creates ownership and promises sustainability. Number 2, improved high-yielding and drought-tolerant seeds are coupled with insurance products and marketed as a package, which persuades farmers to use climate-smart technologies. In fact, evidence shows that farmers were more willing to pay for quality seeds when bundled with insurance than when sold separately. The PBI project also, number 3, the PBI project also trains and equips men and women champion farmers and sends them to educate other farmers and enroll them in the insurance scheme. Women champions have been successful in bringing other women into the insurance space, helping to cushion them against climate shocks and encouraging them to invest sustainably in their farms. To illustrate how PBI can change lives, let me tell you a story of Elizabeth Musembi, a 32-year-old mother of 3 who took up a climate insurance coverage. She paid a premium of $2 during the 2022 season. Her county suffered a prolonged drought, and many farmers lost their crops. Thanks to her picture-based insurance coverage, Elizabeth received a payout of $19, accruing a revenue of $18, which she used to buy 3 packets of seeds to plant her 1 acre of land the following season, and paid off her previous seed loan and used the balance to pay her children's school fees. Furthermore, about 8,000 farmers have signed up to this affordable, inclusive, and climate-smart solution. And the use of strategies like drama to educate farmers on the value of joint household decision-making resulted in men listening to female farmers' advice, which was not the case before. In conclusion, projects like these are changing people's lives and transforming the way they farm, are building resilience to climate impacts, are increasing smallholders' incomes, and are promoting women's empowerment. Thank you very much for listening. Back to you, Erin.
Thank you, Adida. Wow, it's such an inspiring présentation. Thanks so much. Alors maintenant, j'aimerais ensuite vous présenter Natasha.
I would like to present Natasha Lecourt now. She's administrative at the IDRC. She's going to talk about Rising Women. It's a new program that supports transformative research of gender based on gender to promote health and well-being of women after COVID-19. Rising Women helps to to fill the gaps in knowledge that will help us to find immediate and long-term solutions. Natasha, it's up to your presentation. Thank you very much, Erin. Thank you to give me the opportunity to present this new initiative of the center. So, you know, but in the last few years, we've seen that all over the world, women have suffered disproportionately from the impact of COVID-19. For example, women were the most touched by loss of jobs, losing their bread and butter, and they sacrificed their health because they were on the first line of the response to the illness, and they took the load of the additional care for their family. So during the 2022 International Women's Day, the Institutes of Health in Canada, the Council of Research and Human Researchers, and the IDRC launched this initiative, Rising Women. The goal of the initiative is to promote well-being, social and economical well-being in the context of the recovery from COVID. So the initiative, we selected one research project that will be in charge to promote the transfer of knowledge. And there are 23 research projects that are led by institutions of, in Canadian institutions. The projects have been announced in last November at the Canadian Conference on Mental Health International Health. Now, this initiative will have the beautiful thing about supporting 23 research projects is that in addition to being innovative on several levels, the projects cover many different subjects. One of the main issue worldwide is that most women are employed in informal sectors. So they have no access to social security net. In low-income countries, we believe that up to 90% women are employed by the informal sectors. So it's not surprising that the chosen project are trying to improve the life conditions of women who are particularly vulnerable, and they are concerned by health inequities because they are depending on the informal sector. To illustrate what's happening in 2 of the 4 regions that are covered by the initiative, I will talk briefly about what's going on in Asia and Latin America. To begin with Latin America, we have 4 projects that were retained that look at the sex workers in Argentina, domestic workers in Peru, garbage collectors in Ecuador, and victims of violence against women in El Salvador. The 4 projects will implement 2 different approaches to access a social network for the workers that are on the margins of formal systems and all of the benefits that come with it. So another main subject, one issue is work of women within the health sector. We know that women represent worldwide over 3/4 of health workers. And in 11 countries where we have access to discriminating data, women represent over 10% of the health. To go to Asia, one of the projects is looking at the challenges that women meet when they work in health services in Sri Lanka. We have other subjects that were studied, like textiles in Bangladesh, exportation in Malaysia, and another project that looks at women who are immigrating to Thailand. So I don't have enough time to talk about the 15 other projects that are supported by the initiative in Africa, in the Middle East, but I can tell you that the projects and the groups of women are very diversified as well in these regions. So to conclude, we expect that the results of the projects of the initiative have knowledge gaps in terms of the impact of that women have felt. So these projects have contributed to the elaboration of interventions, projects, and strategies that will improve the conditions of women while helping their response to pandemics and future health measures. In general, in majority, the projects are led by experienced women researchers, as well as mobilizing the end users. the beneficiaries of the program. So in 18 countries, the women who are working in different sectors who are collaborating with the research teams or include decision makers will have a chance to get their voices heard, to participate in the program design and politics that will improve the nature of their work and their health as well in crisis as well as in the recovery stage. So at the end, the changes will represent important gains for all of the women communities who are in situations of vulnerability, and they will help the resilience of social protection that can give them good access to health and economic and social benefits that we are trying to give these groups. So once again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to us again. Thank you. It was very interesting.
TF and Women Rise demonstrate the value IDRC brings through generating both concrete solutions through established programming and partnerships and through supporting emerging research with a foresight lens that fills critical knowledge gaps. If you'd like to learn more about our gender transformative research, there are lots of ways that you can do that. There's more information about both of these projects on our website, and you can also find our latest annual report. It focuses our efforts on our efforts to advance gender equality through research. You can also consult, those of you interested, you can consult a recent article that was published this past summer of the Canadian Journal of Development Studies. That was authored by a team of IDRC experts, and the title of the article is Meeting the Challenge of Gender Inequality Through Gender Transformative Research, Lessons from Research in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. So, drawing on insights from our IDRC supported research, the article explores how integrating gender transformative approaches to research and the research methodology can actually support social change. So Edida, Natasha, and I will be available if you have any questions in the Q&A that I think Jean will facilitate later on or in a moment. So Jean, back to you.
Merci, Erin. Thank you very much. Thank you, Natasha. Thank you, Edida. You can see that it's easy to a certain extent to be the president of IDRC with such distinguished colleagues that do the hard work, that are in the trenches. The untold story over here is that what Natasha described was coming directly from the learning experience of IDRC with what was called a think tank initiative. When the pandemic struck and nobody could travel, everyone was locked. Someone had the stroke of genius who said, why don't we plan for the future now? We will need to rebuild after the pandemics. And, we said, wow, that's a great idea. We filled a niche that nobody was thinking really about because all effort were going to urgency of the vaccine, urgency of the care. But IDRC came and said, what about rebuilding this society and rally many others? So Natasha, fantastic. Edida, the work in the field continued during the pandemic. People need to feed themselves. And through their effort, their resilience, our recipient of funding continued to work with the support of our staff that were on daily interaction on Zoom, on Teams, on WebEx, name it. So Erin, great leadership on gender transformative research in a time that has been absolutely difficult. And thanks to the Board of Governors that have really endorsed us to move quick and fast in finding niche where we can make a difference despite the challenges of a pandemic that is still present. So now it's your turn. Whether you are here in Ottawa or online, to ask the question. Dorothée et moi serons disponibles pour y répondre, ainsi que Edida, Natasha et Erin. Et on sera heureux. We'll be more than happy to answer them in the language of your choice, in French or in English, since interpretation is available. There's a microphone over here. You can ask your question into the QA section at the bottom of the Zoom call, and you can also apparently raise your hand. There's someone monitoring the screen on the Zoom call. To kickstart us, there was, I think, one or two questions that were submitted before or so far. So I think who is online to ask the question? Pélagie Lefebvre. Merci, j'avais le petit trempe mental. Voilà, Pélagie.
Pélagie.
Have been brought to our attention up to now. And if anyone in the room wants to stand up to the mic, we will take also the question.
Le son est très mauvais, c'est impossible.
Pélagie, je te donne.
You cannot hear. Can you repeat the question? Please close to the microphone because I had a hard time to hear you. Oh, yes, of course. We have two questions coming from George Betolier. The first question: why is the center investing in high quality research in developing countries, whereas it could invest in countries that are lacking the means to improve the quality of life of the population? It's an excellent question. As I said in my presentation, George, thank you for your question. The IDRC invests in countries where there are needs. The IDRC invest in countries based on resources and adjust to the level of resources that already exist. Our programs are competitive in majority. So you apply, you get a funding based on the quality of your proposal. But the IDRC also accompany people through the other mechanisms for organizations or researchers who are maybe less lucky or who are at another level of scientific development in their country. So they're on a continuum, and we're making strategic choices to accompany some, and some others at different levels along the continuum while we're developing strategies. Next question. How can the center support candidates who want to benefit from their services in Canada, from grants, school grants? So the IDRC has a long tradition of grants, scholarships. The scholarships are usually included in the research projects, but within specific programs like PhD scholarships, it always targets people who do some work that has to do with international development and work that takes place in developing countries. Sometimes, of course, they are Canadian students, sometimes they're international students, but the IDRC does not fund scholarships to come and study in Canada. Some trainings may be offered, like visiting a lab, but it is not in our mandate and it's not our responsibility. The Canadian Research Councils can do it. The IDRC has a specific mandate that to fund Canadian researchers or international researchers that are working on economic development, and it's based on their efforts on site in countries and regions where the problems are actually occurring. Thank you, George. Let's have a question from
So we progress diversity, equity, and inclusion at the center, as well as in our funding. So Dorothy, you want to give a perspective from the governance perspective of how we are tackling diversity, equity, inclusion? I could cover then, from an operational standpoint, and have, Erin and her colleague to speak about, how we do this in the practice in the field. So rapidly, Dorothy.
Okay, no, thank you, Jean. I'm going to answer, but I don't think I got the question really well from Pelagie. But just to say that, at the level of the governance of IDRC, gender equity and inclusion is primary, is key. It's a priority. As governors, we've gone past, what is GDI training to actually making sure that, within who we are as governors, we understand the complexity of the issue. So we're able to provide that oversight that is needed at the level of the center. I think the center has different policies that guide it as a center, because as a center, we have to be able to live up to what is needed before we take that to go and carry it out at the level of the work that we do. So there are two levels, and so we're very confident as the Board of Governors that the center is doing what it needs to do internally to make sure that policies, procedures are up to speed and at the best level, so that when they go out to the work, they're doing it with credibility. Now let Jean talk about what's happening at the field level.
Thank you very much. And as Dorothy was pointing out, at the center, we are providing support to our staff in terms of training, orientation, in terms of our staffing strategy, also to secure diversity, equity, and inclusion, and constantly monitoring through annual survey the evolution of the issue into our workforce. But to the point of the field, how do we translate this with our recipient, and what are they contributing to, Erin?
Let me take a stab at it. Fantastic question, and I think the center is really has this at the top of its mind. And I mentioned something like 38 or so gender transformative projects in a certain year. What does that mean for all the rest of the projects that we have that we provide support to? So we're doing at the moment is really building the framework and the structure within our center to ensure that gender equality and inclusion is at the forefront of every project that we do. It doesn't necessarily mean that every project we do is gender transformative, which is really tackling those, the norms and absolute root causes of gender equality. But all of our programming has to have a gender component to it. And we also recognize that in every area, it's important to have real expertise in figuring out, well, where are the barriers to and girls being participants or on a better footing. So for instance, in the complex world of transforming economies to low carbon economies, for example, and none of us in this world really know exactly what that's going to look like. But at the moment, we know that if things are going the way they are now, it will for sure end up badly for women and girls. So we work directly and closely with experts in low carbon transition and gender to see how they can help us make sure that all of the projects that we're doing in this space really have that strong gender and inclusion lens. Yeah.
Thank you. Natasha, anything to add rapidly? And Edita? Natasha?
Briefly, I would like to add that we have different modes to ensure that our project meets the expectations when it comes to diversity, inclusion, and equality. So when we're developing a call for different initiatives, for women, we ensure that the criteria are clear, that is something that is asked for and assessed, and we are recruiting external evaluators or assessors to ensure that the project has this dimension. So when we are launching projects, they will have the possibility to have different workshops to strengthen this. And I would like to give a concrete example. The initiative of the women is being done in Nairobi with our teams. And since it's mainly women who are the researchers and who have to move around and the issues of children and all this, so we allowed the researchers to come with their babies, with their children, the support they need for daycare services on the site, so that there's more flexibility and inclusion for that the Dida, est-ce que vous avez quelque chose à ajouter?
Thank you. We, as Pelagie has explained, we try, some of the things we do is that we train the grantees. They build in a component in this projects that are funded to train and acquire capacity. We require them to have like gender equality and inclusion experts on the teams, so they can support the project implementation, plus the continuous training that happens, and making sure that the learning continues. But also at the granting level, we have guidelines that we use to make sure that happens with the grantees. And then they, as a matter of fact, they have to work with the communities. So they work with the grassroots, these participatory approaches, and to make sure that whatever they are doing is benefiting the people that need the solutions at the ground.
Thank you very much. We have one question at the microphone. It will be the last one, if you allow me, because I think that we are running a little bit out of time. So please, Patricia.
Thank you, Jean. This question is from Kat Morrow, who is an IDRC alumni. And she's asking, could any one of the guests speak more about intersectionality?
I'm turning to the experts. Who wants to take this on? Please, Natasha.
Je peux commencer. I can start. Actually, it's a really good question. It's really a subject that is at the heart of our discussions when we talk about this. So when it comes to intersectionality, I would say that the center, it's an issue that we deal with in a more honest way with our practices and how we are translating this into this. So we have to train better as an organization. We have to know what it means for our employees, for the way we develop this program. And also when it comes to the design of the calls, it has to be inserted and well understood. We're also giving training for the teams, the research teams, but it's a practice and thought process. It's a continuum. We're always progressing and advancing, and we have to assess how we can improve our practices. And that's what I wanted to say. Thank you, Natasha.
To that one, to just say, I mean, I personally have a lived experience of intersectionality, so I think for every organization at the center, it's really key that these issues are really looked at with that lens. I don't get the name of Professor Anfadikosia, but it really boils down to, the complexity and allowing people who come with that intersectionality to actually bring their authentic voice to the table and actually have that lived experience be valued. So I'll say that the issue of DEI or DEI is not a question of numbers, even for the center. It should really be about retention. If we're working with people in the practice, how many people who come in with all these sectional issues are able to stay and contribute and bring real voice in shaping where the center goes. So it's a really important issue, but it's one that I think the center has front and center as well.
Thank you very much. And link back to the initial question about DEI. It's not only about the bean counting. It's about the training and the knowledge And as Natasha was pointing out, what are we doing in terms of change of practice, of adjustment of culture, of moving not only our recipient forward, but moving ourselves forward, because then we have a better world. Yes, definitively. Thank you very much. Dorothy, I think we're coming to the end. I'll give you the floor again, closing the session and thanking my colleagues from program, Erin, Natasha, and Edita in Kenya for the brilliant presentation and conversation we had with all of you. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Dorothy.
So, absolutely. And again, a big thank you to everyone. This certainly marks the end of the official end of the annual public meetings. Thank you for those who asked questions. In case we missed the interpretation of your questions or we didn't answer them well, please, either resubmit, and we're certainly open to make sure that we're giving the right answers to the right questions. Thank you to our three presenters, Erin, Edita, and Natasha. Thank you for that. And for bringing out all the insights on IDRC's gender equality programming. IDRC's Board of Governors, senior management, employees, thank you again for your tremendous leadership and agility as we continue to navigate this unpredictable and very fast evolving landscape. Thank you so much for your dedication. Je tiens également à...
I would also like to thank Jean Lebel for his leadership, his commitment with the mandate of the IDRC, and for everything that he has done. You have really positioned the center for the future. Thank you. And thank you to all of you who were here with us today
at this IDRC's public meeting. Goodbye, and look forward to seeing you again next year. Thank you.